Hello, 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 hello. This is Willie Cartwright from Save to Sane. Glad to be with you today. Glad to have all of you out there who are with me, regardless of the time zone. So I would say good morning if you are watching this in a time zone that it is early, or you are watching this at a later time and you're watching it in the morning, wherever you are. Good afternoon or good evening. If you are catching this live, then this would be either good afternoon or good evening. But I'd like to say welcome to all of you who are watching this, whether you're watching it live or you see this later on. Glad to have you guys here. This is December the 3rd, and I think that this is going to be the last podcast of this year. I need to take a break, and I think we'll come back the first Wednesday in January. So I want to sort of put that out there. It's not 100%, but it's probably about 95% sure that that is what we're going to do. Uh, just to make some quick announcements before I get going. First of all, let me say thank you, as I always do, to a couple of people. Taisha Essick. Hopefully, you are out there listening today. If not, I want to say hello. If you are, hello. If you're not, and you hear this at a later date, hello. Hope everything is well with the family. Thank you for everything that you've done, and so we will always do that on this podcast, on this show. We are in debt to Taisha and all the things that she's done to bring this podcast to where it is now. And secondly, my wife, my wonderful, supportive wife, who supports me in 100% of the things that I do. And so I'd like to say thank you to her as well. A couple of announcements before. I sort of teased this the last time that we were on here. I don't have the specific link, but hopefully I'll have it in the next day or two. But I will be appearing Saturday morning on with Mandisa Thomas in a spot that she's called In the Cut, which is a program on Black non-believers. So those of you who are familiar with Black non-believers, you can Google it. It's an organization out of Atlanta. Mandisa Thomas is the head of that organization. She is very prolific in the work that she does in this space. Her and I have become good friends over the years, and so I always like to shout out the work that she and others in this space are doing, people of color. And so she's doing an outstanding job. But her organization is Black Non-Believers. And she has a segment called In the Cut where she interview people who are in this space, people like me and other African Americans. I'm not sure necessarily African Americans, but those of us who are in this space, in this secular, humanist, agnostic, atheist space, non-believer space. And so, if you recall, if you remember, some of you remember, I was on her show a few months ago, and we had a lot of technical difficulties. She had actually moved over to a new system, a new platform. Clearly, it did not work well from that standpoint. But I think she switched back over to maybe even this platform, which is StreamYard, which is the platform that I use. Um, so we were going to do this again on Saturday morning. It is, I think it's at 10 o'clock Eastern time. No, I'm sorry, 1 o'clock Eastern time, which would be 10 o'clock my time here on the West Coast, outside of Vegas. And so we're going to do interviews. Going to ask them a series of questions. Hopefully, well, I know that the sound system and the technology would be a lot better. But look out for that. I will post the link um, on this channel and my Facebook and Instagram pages as soon as I get the link from her. If not, be looking out for it in the cut. Non-black believers. So I'll be a guest on that show on Saturday morning. Well, Saturday morning for me and Saturday afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. What else? What else? What else? What else? And I mentioned that this is going to be the last show from this podcast for this year. We'll come back the first Wednesday in January. All of you, those of you who are out there listening, please send me a message. Let me know that you're there. Say hello. Say hi. Certainly appreciate that. Our topic today: why people leave religion, their stories, their patterns, and the psychology behind it. We wanted to dab into that. Today and talk about that. But I also wanted to talk about a couple of things as well. But before I do that, a couple other things I need to do first before Taisha and my wife get me. My book, um, From Saved to Sane, my journey away from Christianity and why Christianity has been detrimental to the African American community. Also, Willie O. Cartwright as me is available on Amazon. You can pick this up. If you look at the chat, I left my email address in the chat in case you guys want a signed copy. Anyone who wants a signed copy, send me an email. I will, in return, send you my Cash App. The books are $19.99. I will send you a Cash App, my Cash App information. You can pay through Cash App, and through the email, you can send me your address and your name or whatever, and I will sign, and we'll mail out a signed copy of the book to you. And so I appreciate those of you who've been supportive of me, not only on this channel, but those of you who've purchased the book and who've actually read the book and given me some commentary about the book. Good, different, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm appreciative of all of it. So I'm not a person opposed to criticism, not at all, or just questions or challenges about some of the things that I wrote, or even the things that I speak about on this channel. So I'm good with that and certainly appreciate that. Secondly, as I said earlier, I wanted to also make sure that I start leaving you guys with something. And so one of the ways that I do that is that I make a suggestion of a book that I've personally read. Most of these, and not all of these, would be books that I've personally read that I think all of you would get something out of. And if you check out the chat, the book that I'm recommending for this podcast is The Black Practice of Disbelief by Dr. Anthony B. Penn. If you're not familiar with Dr. Anthony's work, Dr. Anthony is a self-described humanist. He's not a believer Christian in that sense. He describes himself as a humanist. He's a professor, one of the top professors. I think he's at Rice University, which was the University of Rice University in Texas. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times and had conversations. Actually tried to get him to accept me as a PhD student at Rice. But at the time, he was not accepting any more students. It had something to do with the administration and some other stuff that was going on that was outside of his control or my control. But we have spoken on a couple of occasions. He actually did a academic critique of my graduate thesis paper, which I was going to submit. I wanted to submit certain parts of it to academic for academic writing purposes. So this was a peer, he's more than a peer, but a peer-reviewed critique of my graduate thesis. And so I was happy in the sense that the critique was honest and fair. He mentioned that the thesis should have been a little bit more in depth. And there were some other questions he had, but I was really proud of myself that the critique was not that I didn't get that it wasn't terribly critical, and that he found the writing to be at least of par. If I'm going to submit some of it to academic magazines, there's some other things that I need to clean up, but nothing major. And so I will work on that. But the thesis itself, the graduate thesis itself, is a public writing that is available through Georgia State's library. So you can get that there. And I am happy and proud to say that it has been critiqued by one of the giants in this field and in this space. And so, yeah. And so I wanted to recommend this book, show you what it looks like. And I'm going to read an excerpt from it because it dovetails on what on some of the things that we're going to be talking about on this program this evening. And so here's a picture of the book, The Black Practice of Disbelief, Dr. Anthony Penn. Again, you can get this off of Amazon. This was actually gifted to me by one of my professors who actually introduced me to Dr. Penn. She was the lead professor in my graduate dissertation. And so Dr. Monique Moultrie, I'm very appreciative of her and all the work that she's done with me in this space as well. But the book reads, The Black Practice of Disbelief, an introduction to the principles, history, and communities of Black non-believers. Those of you who are in this space, those of you who are embarking on this journey, understand that being in this space is different for us as African Americans. It is different for us when we compare ourselves to other people and other nationalities or ethnicities, non-African Americans, it is different because we've been taught to believe that being religious, being spiritual is the essence of who we are as a Black person, um, and so that is one of the reasons why many Black non-believers are reluctant to come out about their disbelief. If they are agnostic or if they're atheists, they're certainly are reluctant about admitting that to their community. And this is one of the reasons why. And so I wanted to read this excerpt from you. Jamil Bey, this is a writing, this is on page 44 of Dr. Penn's book. Jamila Bey unpacks the cultural assumption that has kept theism a central marker of Black identity. African Americans have allowed the story to be told that we are a God fearing people. How many times have we heard that? Way too often we have heard that. Um, our culture dictate. Uh, our culture dictates, mandates even that we be spiritual. Accepting that definition of who we are forces us to define our Blackness should we have doubts about spirituality. Accepting that definition means accepting that to be authentically Black is to be religious wrongly, and that to doubt God is a white thing wrongly. We let others define us, and we dare not buck that expectations. So what Dr. Penn is actually saying is what many of us have experienced and we know to be true, that most African Americans associate being Black with being spiritual or being a believer in God, and that if you are not spiritual, that if you're not a believer in God, and if you're not a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, that you are somehow less Black, or you're somehow not Black enough. And so those are some of the experiences that we deal with. And so when we talk about leaving religion, we understand, and this leads us into our topic today. We understand that what I've seen is a generational shift. I've seen pretty much what Dr. Penn talks about in that little excerpt that I read, from people, from baby boomers, from Generation X, which is what I'm part of, even to millennials, some millennials, as these older millennials who absolutely identify with being religious, God fearing as part of who they are, part of our identity as being Black. But what I have also noticed is that younger African Americans who are more likely to leave religion or not be religious, they are not associating their religious beliefs or being religious with their Blackness. They are authentically and fully and completely Black without having to be religious, without having to be a Christian, without having to be Muslim, without having to be spiritual, without having to believe in God. And so there's a shift going on. But for most of us, those of us, at least as I talk about in my generation, older and a little bit younger, that is certainly the issue with us. And so today, we wanted to talk about why people are leaving religion, the stories, the patterns, and the psychology behind it. One of the things that I often do when I get into these discussions, these dialogues with people, is that I often have to explain or express to people why I do what I do. These if I'm on social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, and a new thing that I'm doing that I'm on now, which is Threads. And Threads is very involved. There are a lot of non-believers on Thread. Those of you who are not familiar with that, that's that social network Thread. I'm on there often. And one of the questions that I get, usually when a religious person is angry and has nothing else to say, their parting comment would be, what does it matter to you anyway? If you don't believe in this God, why is it that you spend so much time talking about this God? Or why is it that you're making so many comments about God or disbelief? You notice my shirt says secular humanist. And so that's that's in line with the book. I forgot I wanted to show that as well. But anyway, so what I do, I try to explain to these individuals that religion, the way that it is practiced now, and historically has been very harmful to society, to our society, in a multitude of ways. And so, just the way that religious people, Christians, Muslims, whoever, have the right. Um, and they express that right of publicly announcing their love of their faith and their religion and the good things that they believe that their faith and their religion has done for them and their God has done for them. Me as a non-believer, me as an atheist, have the exact same rights to express my disbelief and what I find to be harmful about religion and those type things. And so I tell them all the time, I say, I do this. This is not just something I do on the whim. This is something I'm dedicated to. This is something that I have education behind me with. This is something that I have, as they say, I have skins on the wall. I have a degree in this, one of my degrees. I have time in this. I have a book that I've written about this, papers, numerous papers, countless debates and dialogues about this podcast. So I've dedicated a large, extended amount of time and effort and resources to what I'm doing. So there's a purpose to what I'm doing. And so I say that because this leads into something that I want to talk about before I get really deep into the topic. And this is part of the topic as well. One of the things that I wanted to start doing and that I have started doing is sort of incorporating some current event stuff that is relevant to the things that we talk about, to the topics that we talk about here. 1109. Sir Relato, glad to have you. Peace to you as well. Thank you for joining us. If you have any comments, please put them in the chat and let us know what's going on. And so I don't know if how many of you have heard, this is a recent development, like in the last 24 hours or the last 48 hours, but there's a story that's going around on social media. And the story is about, and again, this is about why I do what I do. The story is about a University of Oklahoma college student. I don't know if she was a sophomore or junior, but she's a college student, and she's taking a psychology class. I think it was a psychology class, and in the psychology class, her teacher, who is transgender, and that's important to the story. That's the reason why I mentioned that. That's important to the story. Her teacher gave them an assignment. I think the teacher was a teaching assistant, a TA. And the assignment was for them to write a paper about how society judges transgender people or transgenderism, right? And so in the paper, and if you know anything about writing a paper, college papers, there's this thing called a rubric that is given to students. And those of you who are not familiar, what a rubric is just basically instructions of how to write the paper. How are you going to be graded on writing the paper and the things that are essential in order for you to get the best grade. So it'd be stuff like you need a title page, font size, the number of pages, citations, how it should be cited, what form you should use, whether it's Chicago style or AP or whatever style it is, style of writing. All of that is part of the rubric that students are given before they write a paper or an assignment. So it tells you that if you do A, B, C, and D, you should get an A. If you do A, B, and C, then you'll get a B. If you do A, whatever, right? And so part of this rubric or instructions that was given clearly was how to cite a paper. This student, and I don't have her name off the top of my head, but the story is all over social media. This student wrote about transgender people in a very disparaging way. Then remember, instructor, and she knew this. Obviously, this instructor was transgender. It was disparaging, and she used the Bible as her reference. I don't even know if she even cited the Bible per se, which again is another issue. But she used the Bible as reference as to why she had this opinion. And then she talked about how being transgender was wrong. God is making mistakes. Blah 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 blah. But all this was in her mind was all right for her to say this because it came from the Bible. Well, the TA gave her a 0 on the paper. Clearly, the student was upset. Some kind of way. Turning Points, which those of you know, Turning Points is the conservative organization that Charlie Kirk ran, and we talked about that whole deal. But anyway, it was the conservative organization that Charlie Kirk ran, and understand how this relates to. I mentioned this to you guys earlier when we talked about Charlie Kirk and that whole situation. Turning Points is actually an organization that is funded by a billionaire and sort of found Charlie Kirk out there in the wilderness and said, "Oh, he'll be a great face for Turning Points." The purpose of Turning Point as an organization is to bring younger people back into the Christian fold. Because what conservatives realized, or started to realize, and evangelicals started to realize, was that many young people were starting to walk away, had started to walk away from Christianity and religion altogether. And so Turning Points was an organization created, Charlie Kirk being the face of it, that was tasked with bringing younger people back. So Turning Point, here's the story about the young lady at University of Oklahoma, who got an F on the paper because she's referenced the Bible. And now it's becoming a big deal. I think the TA has been either suspended or put on leave or whatever. And so I take this back to why I do what I do, because this is asinine for a whole variety of reasons. Taisha, what's going on, y'all? Taisha is here. Greetings, Taisha. Love to have you here. Glad that you're here. You just heard about this story. Very interesting. Yeah, and so here are the reasons why this is absolutely wrong. First of all, anybody who's ever been in college, and I would dare to say even in high school, if you've written a paper and the teachers ask you to cite your sources, there is a proper way to cite your sources, number one. Number two, there are certain things that are not considered empirical sources. And so a source has to be something that is written, that is public, that is peer reviewed, and that is factual, or at least through the peer review, it is factual, right? Even in college, in my experience, as both a person who have written a number of papers and a person as an adjunct professor who have graded papers, even stuff like Wikipedia is not considered a credible citation source. And so the Bible, in this case, first of all, my understanding is that it was not even cited properly. But number two, even if it was cited properly, the Bible is not a credible empirical source for citation on a paper in a psych class or any other class outside of maybe religion when it is relevant. Because the Bible, like other mythology, is viewed as mythology, is viewed as something that is not factual. And so it is not a peer-reviewed source that can be used on a paper. So she's wrong all the way around. She's wrong for not citing it correctly. She's wrong for trying to use it as a citation source. She's wrong for the information. And if you listen to, well, I haven't heard an interview, but if you listen to what she wrote in the paper, and there was a small excerpt of what she wrote in the paper, it reads like the writings of a fifth grader. Some of the things that she was saying is not at all at the college level, especially for a flagship university like the University of Oklahoma. They should be ashamed. I'm not sure how this student got into that school, got into that university, or writing like this. And so, yeah, and I know I'm going to get pushback and all this kind of stuff, but also maybe it's why Oklahoma, the state, is ranked 48th or 50th in education because of individuals like this. But what I want to concentrate on or focus on is the reason why I do what I do is because if we allow an organization like Turning Point to fire a student, a TA, TA, for those of you who don't understand, is a teaching assistant, usually a graduate student who's probably working on a PhD, but is teaching as part of what they do to receive a payment or a stipend or whatever. If we allow Turning Point to apply pressure to the university system and they fire this TA for doing their jobs, and then we are allowing a religious organization to dictate to our universities, our places of public education, our places of education, how they should run their class and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Again, the separation of church and state, not allowing a religious organization to tell a university how they should grade their papers, and then finally, the thought, the fear of having to accept any kind of religious scripture as factual and as a credible citation source is scary to any of us who are in academia and any of you who will benefit from academia. And so it is scary. Taisha has a couple of comments. Taisha said, I referenced the the Bible in my religion class instead of buying the required text and failed the assignment. I withdrew, took the class over. I left the faith and made the dean's list. Absolutely. That listen. That I have written papers. Like for example, I wrote something recently for university for UNLV, and I'll talk about that at a later date. And I had my professor from Georgia State to critique it for me. And in that statement, in that paper that I wrote, I mentioned that religion is inherently discriminatory. And my teacher, my professor, deemed me for that. She got all over my case for making just that small statement because that is a statement, a subjective statement, a statement of opinion. Although it can be proven to be true, but there was a different way that I should have phrased that. And so this is the things that we're talking about. If you read the paper and some of the stuff that she said, uh, her her statement was way out of bounds, and it was not college level writing. It was beyond opinionated. It was beyond subjective. It was a form of indoctrination, and so forth and so on. So things like that. Even when I defended my graduate thesis at Georgia State, I got pushback from my professors because of some of the stuff, some of the smaller things that I had in there that was basically opinion and subjective. They wanted where did this information come from? What did you cite? Where's the book? Where's the writing that this information comes from? And I had to make sure that all of that was in there. And so I certainly understand and is 100% supportive of this TA. The other issue, obviously, is the student being upset, even though she may or may not admit it, and certainly Turning Point's being upset that a university has a transgender TA or transgender teachers, because as we all know, this administration harps on the idea of wokenism, which they completely blown out of proportion, completely misused and misinterpreted. But anything that they don't like, anything that they view as being liberal or progressive, they call it woke. And so anything that would also include anything in the LGBTQ or trans community. So it did not help the situation that this TA was transgender, even though the paper was about transgenderism. And so that was such a huge issue. And I'm waiting to see how this gets resolved. If the TA gets her job back, if not, I would sue, absolutely sue, because the TA did nothing wrong from what I can tell. And so, Texas Goddess, what's going on? Glad to have you here. Taisha, Texas Garden sent hi to you. And so, yeah. And so when people ask me, why do I do what I do? It's because of stuff like this. We cannot afford as a society to become a theocracy. We cannot, as a society, allow individuals now a vocal and outspoken. People say it's a minority, the evangelicals, and in numbers it is. But I think that that is a misnomer in the sense of this. Um, Evangelicals by numbers may make up 30-ish% of the U.S. population. But those individuals who are apathetic to the cause and what evangelicals push for, including some African Americans who are very devout in their faith, and those others who say, "Well, it doesn't really concern me, so I'm not, I'm good with the evangelicals." That is a larger percentage, and I think that is pushing over 50% of this country, and so that becomes an issue. You look at what's going on in Texas. The governor has mandated against what I think the courts have said, but has mandated that all the schools in the state of Texas include the Ten Commandments, have the Ten Commandments listed somewhere. Again, we're talking about a theocracy. We're talking about the evangelicals, and that is even if you don't think that surviving or existing under a theocracy is quote unquote dangerous, you have to understand who is behind these policies from the evangelicals, and they are the same people that wrote Project 2025. And so, if you're familiar with Project 2025 and the things that are in there, these are some of the same people, some of the same organizations, some of the same groups. And so, if you think from a religious standpoint, it maybe it's not dangerous. It is from a civil rights standpoint. It is from a social, cultural standpoint. It is from the standpoint of economics and just sheer survival. It is an issue and it is a problem, and we should make known of that as well. And so indirectly, so that was sort of indirectly tied in with the topic of why people leave religion. But if you look at why young people are leaving religion, it is about what I just said. There is the um, hypocrisy that they see. But from the situation, if we go back to this University of Oklahoma situation, it is many young people are understanding that the Bible is not lining up with what they've learned in science, and what they learned. The creation story does not line up with what science says, and so now with the advent of the internet, um, young people can do research instantly on the spot, and they can fact check their professors and their teachers and their uh, 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 church leaders, all of that on the spot. And so, from a scientific standpoint, it is not lining up. And so, I've said this before to on this podcast and on other when I've been interviewed before. One of the things that we sort of don't talk about enough is how being a very devout country, and for us as African Americans, being even more devout than the general population, affects us from an educational standpoint, from an intellectual standpoint. When we're competing, when our kids are competing on an international scale with kids, young people from across the world, look at the paper that this young lady wrote at University of Oklahoma, the flagship university of that state. There is no way in the world that that paper is intellectually compatible with young people her age in other countries. There is no way, looking at the wording, the verbiage, what she's using, the citation, how it's written, that paper is in no way competitive with those individuals, other students her age across the world, and what they're writing. Secondly, um, here's a FYI for people in this country. Most people across the world understand that religion is what it is. It is a belief system based largely on mythology. It is not science, and so it is not used from an intellectual or academic standpoint. And so when you are on the international stage and you're competing with people across the world, and your reference point is the Bible, you are laughed at because you appear to be unintelligent. You appear to be uninformed because they have long since passed that. It is only us and some other um, uh, highly religious countries, like maybe in the Middle East, that has that kind of reference to biblical and religious scriptures. And so we want our young people to be competitive, internationally competitive. And so we want them to be understanding of everything from science to math, and have a clear understanding of what is the accepted norm for writing, the accepted norm for understanding these other topics. And we don't want them to sound like they're not intelligent, and that they're intellectually behind. And so this is what this young lady presents. I'm sure that there are other countries and people in other countries who are looking at the story and saying, really, she wrote a paper using the Bible as a reference point and as a citation point for a serious paper. She would get laughed at. Taisha says, see, 19 years showed how powerless God, Jesus, and the Billy Goat really are. No return on investment. Absolutely. Absolutely. The paper was that bad, so bad she couldn't blame it on AI. Yeah, and this is just from the small excerpt that I read, Taisha, that I heard and that I saw on social media, and some of the comments and the way it was written. the verbiage and the word usage, and her choice of words. Uh, but anybody who says, blah 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 because the Bible says so, in a serious paper already, that should totally disqualify her in the paper, and clearly it did, according to this TA. Unless you are talking about something in a religious studies course or religious course, that is specifically talking about the Bible, then absolutely. But outside of that, no. And so I'm going to go back and listen to her. She did an interview with one of these conservative organizations, just to hear her side. We still have not heard the side of the TA, or the university, other than just a statement that this TA was put on leave or whatever. So yeah, but again, that's what we do. And so young people are seeing this. They see this. It's like, listen, this doesn't line up, with science. I have friends. I myself, they're saying that themselves may be part of the LGBT T community and the trans community. So it doesn't make sense. So these people are leaving. But I think, and we've covered a lot of this stuff before in various talks on this podcast. But what I want to talk about are some of the other things that maybe we haven't touched on as much when we talk about why people are leaving religion. One of the reasons why I decided to do this subject, and I've sort of done this subject before, but I want to do this again because there is a belief out there from believers that if you were once a believer and you are no longer a believer, however you identify, whether it's anything from free thinker to atheist, somehow you were never a believer to begin with. And the reason why believers say this is because they cannot fathom the idea that you escaped from the mental shackles of the religious prison that they can continue to find themselves in. They can't fathom the idea that you had the courage and the fortitude to ask questions, and follow where those questions lead, even if the answer to those questions led you away from religion. And so they tend to have a problem with that. And so what they say is, well, you probably wasn't one to begin with. And so that's one of the sort of things that we don't talk about all the time. But what I always tell people is that um, church hurt, questioning the Bible, not getting sufficient answers, all of this is they're a symptom of the major issue. The reason why most people leave religion is because they find out that it is not real. They find out that it is mythology. They find out that under duress and under critical analysis, that it doesn't stand up. That's that's it. People don't leave. People don't become agnostic or atheists because they got mad with the secretary of the church, or they saw the pastor having an affair with someone, because their relationship with religion, and dare to say their relationship with their deity, is a personal one. And so because the church did this and do that, now what, seeing the pastor having an affair with someone else, or being angry with the church secretary, whatever, may lead one to ask questions that will ultimately lead to them getting the answers, that will ultimately lead to them leaving the faith. That is very possible and very likely. Because if, I use this analogy all the time. If I tell you that marriage is the greatest thing in the world, and I've been married 20 years in in February. If I tell you that marriage is the greatest thing in the world, and my wife is awesome, and I have no need, no desire to be with anyone else, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But every time you see me, I'm in the face of another woman. I'm at a bar, or I'm at a place that I shouldn't be, and I'm flirting or doing these things. Then you're going to question me and the things that I've said about marriage, and B, more than likely, you're going to question the institution of marriage. And so that's what happens in religion. These pastors and other members of the church stand there and say, God's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Being part of this faith is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Da 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 da. But you see them doing things that are unchrist-like or unbecoming of their faith. Then you're going to start to question them. Are they being sincere? Are they authentic? Is this some kind of mirage? And then you're going to later on, you're going to question the institution itself. I thought religion was all of this in a bag of chips, but apparently, even though people say it is, it really isn't. And so that leads to some of the things that we've seen from as to why people are leaving the church. There are stories. I literally I have two friends off the top of my head who were deeply involved in the church, deeply devout in the church, and both of them, young men, as a matter of fact, at some point were so involved in the church until they decided to do one of these Christian summer camps. One guy in particular in the South, I won't call his name, but he's a good friend of mine. He was deeply involved in church, ended up going to one of these Christian camps during the summer. And the things that he learned and the things that he saw and the questions that he eventually got answered or whatever led him to later on becoming an atheist. And now he is an open atheist. And so it led him away. And I have another friend who had the same exact experiences. It is almost like, and my wife and I, we have friends who have gone to seminary school. I mean, real seminary school, not one of these, neighborhood, go for a week and now you're a pastor or whatever, but real seminary school. And I've had to professors who've gone to multiple seminary schools and have their, master's degrees in divinity and all of that kind of stuff. And what I've heard from all of them is that going to seminary school would do one or two things. It would either strengthen your faith because you almost have to because of the things that are thrown at you from the standpoint of information that you was not aware of regarding the Bible and religion and how things came to be. And so you kind of grab onto your faith because you're like, oh my God, this is shaking me. Or like many, it pulls you away from your faith and you become, at a minimum, you become a free thinker, you become a humanist, agnostic, and eventually an atheist. And we see that that has happened. Um, Dan Barker, who is head of the Freedom from Religion organization, very well known and popular organization in this space. And he is a very well known and popular figure in this space. Was once a devout pastor, preacher. He even has written gospel songs or religious songs. But he left, became an atheist, started the organization, Freedom from Religion organization, him and his wife, very powerful, probably the most impactful non-religious secular organization in this space, the most impactful and one of the larger, if not the largest organization. And I was interviewed by him about my book about 3 years ago. But anyway, he started a side organization called the Clergy Project for individuals similar to what I just said. Those individuals who, this is for clergy members who are still preaching, who are still going to church every Sunday and standing in the pulpit and telling their parishioners these things, but they themselves are not believers in any of this stuff. They're no longer believers, but because of economics, community shame, fear of being ostracized, fear of losing family members, including a spouse, or the fact that this has been such a huge part of their life, and it's been the only way that they've understood or know how to make a living. They can't leave. And so Dan Barker started this organization for those individuals. It is, as you may think, it is a very private and hush hush organization because you don't want to. These pastors don't want it to get out there that they are no longer religious, that they no longer believe the things that they believe. And so it's just not the pastors. There are people in the church. Many people sit in the church every Sunday and they go for a variety of reasons. They go for social impact. They go because their spouses, significant others. They go to take the kids. They go because it's customary. They go because it's part of their culture. But they really don't believe the stuff anymore. They don't believe in the deity and the divinity of Jesus, and they don't believe in this God character. They understand that the stuff in the Bible is mythology, borrowed or stolen mythology, all of that, but yet they still go. Slowly but surely, these people are starting to pull away. And I think it starts with people saying, okay, I don't necessarily need to go, at least this is what they're telling others. I don't necessarily need to go to church every Sunday. I can watch it on television, right? Um, and then they get home and they stop going to church, and they may occasionally watch a church service on television, but eventually they fade away. Like I posit in my writings, they become apathetic to religion. You know, if you ask them, do you still believe in God? Many of them will still say, yeah, out of habit, out of customary, out of fear. But deep down inside, nothing that they do from their daily activities will show that they still believe in this God character. And so they become apathetic to religion and to God. And that's kind of the process that happens. LMA, Jay, what's going on? Glad to have you. See, I was going to bring up the number of students that enter seminary school as Christians and leave atheists. Couldn't make it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There are I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head, but somewhere around 25 to a third of the students that enter seminary school end up atheists. And you can check the stats for me on that. But I heard this from a audio book that I was listening to or reading a few months ago, a few weeks ago, I think. And this is part of what was being said. This person who wrote the book had this similar experience, and so they went back and started doing some of the research on the number of individuals who, as Christians or believers, enter seminary and leave as atheists. I think she didn't even finish the program. This particular person, she didn't even finish the program because it shook her so much, and she became an atheist. But yeah, it's crazy, and so yeah, and so don't let anybody fool you. That you see this stuff on the media and the news. All these young people are coming back to church and they're coming back to God. The numbers don't bear it out. You could do research on any Pew Research study that talk about the high number of people who are leaving the faith, who are leaving religion, the people who are becoming nuns, which we talked about that before. Nuns are individuals who are everything from I haven't been to church in a number of years. Maybe I still believe in a God, to those who are flat out atheists. That is the largest quote unquote religious group in the country. There are other countries who are becoming more and more secular and who are thriving in their secularism, running their society and their culture without the influence of religion, which is one of my ultimate goals that I would like to try to get to. I won't see it in my lifetime, but I would love to see this country create public policy and be ran without the influence of religious doctrine or religious dogma. And I think that is absolutely one of my personal goals into why I do the work that I do, and why I'm doing what I do. So yeah, so there are a number of reasons. We talk about young people and even not so young people leaving the church because the church is failing to live up to its to fighting the social issues. The church, 40, 50, 60 years ago, the church was on the forefront of leading in social issues, whether it be the civil rights movement, even some economic issues. But now they seem not to want to be as outspoken about those issues as they have been before. I mentioned this, I think, one time before. If you look at the Black Lives Movement, for the first time in our community, we had a movement, a large movement for social change and social justice that was not led by your traditional church clergy type of people. And that's the first time, but that says a whole lot. That again, the church is not on the forefront of these social issues like they used to be. And so people are seeing that and they're saying, what am I getting out of the church? Why is the church not on the forefront of these sort of social issues? We talked about the anti-science issue earlier. Um, how again, going back to this story of the Oklahoma University, here's a student who is writing a paper in psychology class, and is choosing to use the Bible as her source. That is anti-science, and we see from evangelicals, those Christian nationalists and Christian nationalism, They are very much anti-intellectual. They're anti-science. I have a beloved fraternity brother who is Catholic. He and I argue on social media all the time. He is one of the few truly devout Black Catholics that I know, and he believes that the Bible and evolution and Big Bang and natural selection are compatible. And I tell him that it is not compatible. There is nothing in science that tells us that a supernatural being created the earth in 6 days. There is no truth to the Noah's Ark story, any of the natural phenomena that we see and hear about in the Bible. There is no, uh, there is zero corroboration between science and Genesis and the creation story whatsoever, and many other issues in the Bible. And I made this perfectly clear to him. His point of what he does and what he's done in his pushback to me is saying that, well, in the future, we're going to see as a society where these things come together and are compatible. I said, brother, you're making a lot of assumptions that are not real and that may not ever be real, and so you can't base this on assumptions. I said, as of right now, as of today, there is nothing in science that makes it compatible or corroborates any creation story whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. So we talk about that. Texas Goddess, what's going on? Texas Goddess said, Willie, I really can understand how some people can stay in the church because of community. I deeply miss it, but I can no longer tolerate the rhetorical and prejudice toward LGBTQ, patriarchy, and etc. Absolutely. Texas Goddess, I mentioned earlier, I don't know if he was here, but I've gotten on Thread, which is a social media, I guess it's kind of the equivalent of X. Um, and so last week, I made the pronouncement on Thread that I am a unapologetic atheist. And so the last couple of days, I've had a young man, I guess he's a man, I think it's a guy, came on and it's challenged me in saying that atheism is as dumb, in his words, is as dumb as being a believer. But his rationale behind it is because science has debunked religion and God, and so that position of being an atheist is a position that doesn't need to be stated or made. And so, to your point, Texas guys, what I explained to him was that because in the post I mentioned that my deconversion is in year 10, and so I mentioned to him that first of all, you don't understand that deconverting is different for each person. Um, it is more than a physical, but it is also an emotional and a psychological experience because of where Texas God is in part because of the community that you miss. And I said that each person is should be able to go through their deconverting process on their own speed and their own journey. Um, and I think this person just wanted to sort of show me how much he or she thinks that they really know. They cited studies or whatever, and that's fine. But that wasn't the point of it. And so I explained this to them. And so to your point, Texas God is absolutely. It is a process. Listen, I find myself occasionally driving down the street and listening to gospel music because it is if it's not depressing, the music that's not the gospel music that's not depressing, it is some fire gospel music that I used to love and listen to. And when I hear the song, I still love it. So yeah, um, and I say this all the time. I've said this before. I in my time, especially as a child growing up in the church, I had great experiences. My Sunday school teacher is one of the person who was most instrumental in me going to college. Um, some of my best friends we met, uh, hung out in the church. I've had great experiences with church. I met some of the most wonderful people. The person who I still hold as from a standpoint of high integrity. Probably the greatest person that I know, that I revere, is a pastor. He's my mentor. He married my wife and I. I have the absolute utmost respect for him. And so yeah, and so I certainly understand it. It is difficult, but like you said at the very end, I just cannot sit in a church and listen to all of the stuff that is spewed out, the hatred, the hypocrisy, the flat out lies. I just cannot, once I said this, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's no putting it back in. And so, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that we don't miss certain aspects of it. And I think all of us, or most of us who have been part of it for any length of time, there are elements of it that we certainly miss. And so I would be remiss if I said I don't miss any of it. There are friends, there's some music, some songs that I reminisce about when I hear the songs. And so yeah, my mother, before she passed, um, she was a pastor. The church was her first love. She loved church and bowling are the two things that she loved the most. And so I have fond memories. I have some, not so fun memories, but I have fond memories of her happiness and joy that she got from being in that space and in that environment. So absolutely. LMA said, when it comes to gospel music, it is such a shame that such musical talent is wasted on such other nonsense. Yeah, absolutely. And I would, there is a genre of music, or at least there should be a genre of music that is just basically feel good music that is not tied to or related to a particular deity or a church or a particular god or even a particular um, genre of religion, right? Just feel good music. And I know there is a genre of music out there, but I think some of these artists that we hear that are making gospel music, if they said, you know what, I want to continue to make music that make people feel good about life and about living, but maybe I don't want it tied to a deity or a god or this particular phase. This particular space that they're in, and maybe they themselves are no longer believers. Now we've seen gospel artists who come out as non-believers who eventually leave the church, and so maybe they should get together and create or be more influential in a genre that already exists for music that is just feel good music. And I think all of us would appreciate that, and more of us would listen to that as well. Yep. Um, yeah, you never heard of the Thread? Yeah, it's called Thread. That's what it's called. So if you look it up in Google, it's just like X, but it's people making comments about stuff, and you can respond to the comments. I don't know. I think you can do 500 words or something like that. So yeah. LMA, you say Kurt Franklin still? Yeah, I still listen to Kurt Franklin. I still listen to a lot of it. Marvin Sapp is one of my favorites. I listen to Marvin Sapp. I mean, there's a lot of them that I still listen to. Um, LMA said they tried to rebrand it as inspirational, but who are they kidding? Absolutely. And I think they're going to have to get rid of the title inspiration because we know what it ties back to. They got to come up with a whole new term, a whole new word, new verbiage for it in order for those of us to really, listen to it on a grand scale. But yeah, and so that's pretty much for me. A couple of ending announcements. This is going to be, I'm 98% sure this is going to be the last podcast for this year. I need to take a break. There's some stuff going on. I'm still doing my substitute teaching, working with the kids, but I'm going to take a break from all of it in a couple of weeks. So, but we'll be back the first Wednesday, I think, in January. But you'll get the notice. I'm going to be on Non-Black Believers with Mandisa Thomas this Saturday morning. Well, morning for me because it's 10 o'clock, but I think it's 1 o'clock on the East Coast. I'm going to try it. When I get the link from her, I will post it here and post it on my other social media pages. But if you are familiar with Go to Black Non-Believers. There's a segment that happens every Saturday called In the Cut. I will be the guest on that show this Saturday. So look out for that as well. And so forth and so on. Texas got his last comment, said women being silent and women being submissive. Absolutely. I just cannot get with that. That's another, and so many other issues too as well. But I want to end that with that, and I want to end with this saying thank you guys for a fantastic year. I certainly appreciate all the support. Some of you are just you're there every other week, and I appreciate that. You don't understand how much I appreciate that. Those of you who have told other people who have supported me by buying my book, who've told other people, who invited other people on the show, who've made comments. Thank all of you. Could not do this show without you. We hope to make the show even better next year, but certainly appreciate all of you from the bottom of my heart. We are organically over 500 subscribers. Every single subscriber is a real person. So I am very, very happy and proud of that. It's not in the thousands like some other people, but 500 real people. And there's other people who listen, who have heard of it. And so we'll continue to grow this channel. We'll continue to work and grow this channel together. But I am very thankful and happy and appreciative of all of you. Enjoy the holidays, however you celebrate or don't celebrate it. Enjoy and be safe. And I will see you in January. I think the first Wednesday, but you will get the notice. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you guys in January next year.